The wonderful Linda Scott is here. Of course, she's part of the City of Sydney Council, but she is, pulling up stumps just a few weeks to go now, but still represents local government at National Cabinet, and none other than the wonderful James Ashby, who wants to get into that Queensland Parliament via the seat of Keppel. Of course, One Nation, vote now, vote early for him to get that spot. So let's talk about a couple of things, including a former Supreme Court judge has said that housing should be a human right in Australia. Now, James, there isn't a person when you see a collection of people that are sleeping rough that doesn't go, well, come on, surely we can do better. We're really rich. Why can't there be, a night in a hotel, etc., etc. But obviously, we also have the orthodoxy who believes that we should be having, 1 million people joining us in this country every couple of years. So how would that work if it was to be considered a right when obviously we don't have the supply for the existing population, let alone future populations?
Well, some of these judges are actually making people homeless, particularly in the family law courts. So I hope that he actually starts having a conversation with his colleagues at a higher level, because quite often it's the blokes that are left homeless when those family law matters reach the court and the bloke's turfed out and he's got nowhere to go. So it is somewhat a right for people to have a house, or more or less a roof over their heads. But we're talking about, I read his article and I thought to myself, you're talking about an era where you could build a house for 50 grand.
Yeah.
I know Mum and Dad built their place in the 80s. Land was 15,000, the house was 35,000, and that was a brick home back in Landsborough when we were kids. You can't do that today. And the average house, I was only in the main street of Yeppoon this weekend and just sort of scouting around at property prices, and a new house and land package in a back block here on the coast is going to set you back no less than $750,000.
Blimey.
So it's all well and good, but look, if people want a house, if people want a roof over their heads, really you've got to start planning for this at a very young age. Forget these $20, $30, $40 and $50,000 holidays overseas every year as a 20-year-old. You've got to start knuckling down and put that money away for your future, because there's nothing worse than being an older 30s, 40s family with 3 kids in tow and having to move every 6 to 12 months because the rent went up and you've had to move somewhere else. If you want housing affordability, you've got to try and get into the market earlier, and that means being disciplined with your money. Don't just think that you can piss away your money at nightclubs and bars of a weekend and lattes every morning on the way to work. You've got to start saving, and parents really need to get that through the kids' heads at this early age.
See, I think there's a lot of fairness in what James is saying, Linda. Obviously, when it comes to the people that are sleeping rough right now, right? Like literally in New South Wales, there is a little courtyard that's underneath the Premier's office. And for as long as any of us have been talking about politics, someone sleeps rough underneath the Premier's office every night, right? There's a lot of issues from veterans, all the rest of it, right? Homeless services desperately need to be increased. So we all can understand what some of the solutions are there. But isn't also a fundamental issue for Australians right now is that I think that this extends to education, and certainly when it comes to home ownership, is that we're actually not willing to move around. Like other parts of the world, you may be born in a certain city, but you go to university somewhere else, or you might get your first job somewhere else. Australia seems to have this very sort of clustered idea that if I'm born in Melbourne, I get to stay in Melbourne. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't want to stay in Melbourne, but if you can only afford to go to Wodonga, then go to Wodonga.
Look, when I was first elected to the City of Sydney now 12 years ago, it was the case that many regional mayors said for them that people sleeping rough in their towns was just not an issue. It was really a Sydney problem. And you're right, Paul, it is the case that we've got so many people each night, tragically, in the City of Sydney still sleeping rough. But over the last few years, it is the case that regional mayors have started telling me that they have people sleeping in their towns rough for the first time in living memory. But here's what I won't cop. I won't cop James Ashby and I won't cop Peter Dutton and the Conservatives blaming individuals and particularly blaming young people for the fact that these are economic conditions that are driving the housing affordability crisis. That is just rubbish, and we have to call that out. This is not lazy young people.
No, that's Labor's
This
immigration
is
policy, which is also
challenges
driving
to
up prices
wage
in
growth.
houses.
And here's what
And
Peter
Linda,
Dutton-
you've got to make
here's
it
what
very
Peter
clear to your
Dutton wants
colleagues,
to
stop
do. Peter
letting
Dutton
hundreds
and
of
James
thousands in a
Ashby
year.
want to get in the way of normal working people's wages growing, and that's why young people find it harder to afford a home. So I will not cut from James
We're not going to have minimum wage rise increases, which are going to be able to get you to $1 million for a deposit for a two-bedroom unit in Sydney.
Lazy or frivolent. That's just wrong. It's just wrong. Normal Australians
Don't try and
should
twist
be able
this,
to
Linda.
continue to
You're
afford
twisting
houses.
But
This
to your
is very
point,
good
James,
of Labor. They like to twist.
Yeah, they do. But to your point, James, about again, look, this is what about this issue, right? Everyone interprets things to be very personal, right? Now, obviously, there are going to be circumstances of the people that have been working their backside off, that aren't earning enough money, that are pulling their head in as tight as they possibly can, who aren't able to get anywhere near it, right? However, there are other examples of people who may well haven't been pulling their head in as tight as they possibly could, but they're still complaining. And there could be some other examples of people who may even have the cash, but they don't have the houses. And I've got to say, James, it reminds me a little bit of the general sort of parenting or education debate, because all of us have slept somewhere or lived somewhere or paid the rent somewhere. We all think we know how to solve this.
Yeah, but the safety net is failing, Linda. It's your people within Labor that just continue to allow, what if it's not 750,000 people into the country in 1 year, it's another 500,000. And this is part of the problem. The safety net for the people that are already here has disappeared. I spoke to a bloke who's living it rough out of a camper van of his. He's been on the streets, basically moved from shire to shire to shire, can't sleep anywhere safely around here in Livingston. So he goes and finds some back block area to sleep. And the problem is, he's a bloke who's worked his entire life. He's fallen through the cracks through hard times due to medical reasons. And now he's busted ass sitting in a bugged out little bloody camper van. He says it himself, and he can't do anything about it. No one within the government's prepared to help because they're too worried about the 40-odd thousand refugees that have come in via aircraft under this Labor government federally that are getting looked after by your people over this bloke.
Are standing in the way of the Albanese Labor government's record investment in public housing.
Own it, Linda.
We've got a Prime Minister who grew up in public housing, who believes in it, who wants to fund it, and your party and the Conservatives stand in the way of it in the Senate. We want to build more housing for people like this bloke.
You think you can build houses for $80,000? It's impossible, lady.
It's a disgrace.
Get it through this thing here. Your plan has failed.